Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and members of the committee. Back again to talk about LRT. So you know from the last time I was here speaking with you that my organization supports the project, and from reviewing information in the environmental assessment, we believe that the LRT will bring environmental benefits to the city, including improving our air quality along the route. So I wanted to just talk today about something a little bit different, just to reinforce some of the concerns that we've already raised. I want to read you a really brief excerpt from the preamble to Ontario Bill 172, Climate Change Mitigation and Low Carbon Economy Act 2016. And I believe this is really important legislation because it has implications for our future, and it's about taking serious action on the climate crisis. And here's the vision that exists within the preamble to that piece of legislation. Enabled and supported by the Cap and Trade Program and related actions, the Government of Ontario envisions by 2015 a thriving society generating fewer or zero greenhouse gas emissions. Businesses and innovators will be creating world-leading low-carbon technologies and products that drive new economic growth, productivity, and job creation. Ontarians will live, work, and travel in sustainable ways in healthier and more livable communities. So this fits into some of what I talked about when I was here last time, just in terms of intensification in our urban cores and providing the higher order transit that really facilitates that sort of thing happening. But I want to emphasize the fact that this vision has a really major challenge facing it and facing us as citizens living in Ontario in making this kind of a future vision reality. And I have some recommended reading for all of you. I can leave this copy behind if anyone wants it. This is the latest Greenhouse Gas Progress Report from Dr. Diane Sachs, the Ontario Environmental Commissioner. Her office does this report every year, and it lets us know what our commitments are in Ontario and where we're at. So I've pulled some information from that report. From the Commissioner's 2016 Greenhouse Gas Progress Report, transportation is responsible for the largest and fastest growing share of Ontario's greenhouse gas emissions. These emissions have grown by 28% since 1990 and totaled 58.7 megatons in 2014. Over 80% of these emissions come from on-road passenger and freight vehicles such as cars and trucks. And although federal standards are improving the fuel efficiency of passenger vehicles, their benefit has been more than offset by an increase in both the number of vehicles and the total distance traveled. So we've got a serious challenge. And Ontario has set targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the goal was to 6% below 1990 levels by 2014, and that's an 11 megaton reduction to approximately 171 megatons. And the province met that target. And the target was met by actually closing coal-fired power generating plants in this province. And we all know the profound and positive impact that's had in cities like Hamilton. Think about the fact that smog days are really a distant memory for most summers now. But in 4 years, by 2020, Ontario has to reduce emissions a further 15 megaton, a bigger and faster reduction than the 12 megaton reduction that was achieved between 1990 and 2014. And then if you look at the additional commitments into the future, we're looking at an additional commitment from the province to reduce 1990 levels by 37% by 2030 and by 80% by 2050. So this is profound. They're profound changes that we're talking about. And if we recognize that transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions and that this source continues to be on the rise, the challenge for us is to build mobility systems that are universally attractive. We need to make that transition work. So the road that we were heading down, pardon the pun, I shouldn't have used road as a pun here, but was to build higher order transit through LRT that would really facilitate that higher density development that in turn is going to help us to facilitate those modal shifts. It's not easy. I know that we live in a car culture, and I think in Hamilton you just need to look out the window of this building to see that our city is still dominated by that car culture. But if we don't succeed here, the implications are dire. And I can stand up here and say that over and over again, I think till I'm blue in the face. But it's true. It's not just me saying that anymore. So 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, where are we going to be? And I would urge all of you to think about that when you're reflecting on this opportunity before you today. We've got $1 billion to start that transformation towards a system that's going to draw in people who maybe never thought about public transit before. And I agree, we've got to build that larger bus network to feed into it efficiently. But if we don't do that now, my fear is where are we going to be?
Sorry, Doctor, if I could just get a motion to extend the time. Sorry, moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favour, carried. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. I'm almost done.
You've got as much time as you need.
So if we don't make that transition, I'm worried about where we're going. Where are we going if we turn this down at this point? If we turn this opportunity that the province is handing us on a platter? I'm fearful for the future of this community, for future generations, and what the implications are going to be. Because I think, it's hard for me to stand up here and make you try to imagine what the implications of the climate crisis are moving into the future. But those transportation emissions are something we need to get under control. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Doctor. We have Councillor Jackson. Councillor.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. Dr. Lukasik, thanks again for coming in. Seriously, you should be recruited by the provincial Liberals to get you on their communications team for the stuff you speak about. Because I suggest that the messaging, as tough medicine as it is, unfortunately, isn't garnering the kind of support publicly it should. That's my humble opinion. Dr. Lukasik, I decided, in light of some of the pushback and the opposition in the community with the LRT overall and some of the concerns, I decided to go back to reread the Rapid Ready report that our former HSR Director Don Hall authored a few years ago, I think in 2013. Quickly read to you. Council of the Day, Dr. Lukasik, unanimously approved the RRR as a guiding document for a future public transportation in Hamilton. It laid out a 25-year strategy of transportation improvement for Hamilton necessary for successful implementation of LRT at some future date beyond the 25-year time horizon. On page 25, quickly the quote, "It would not be productive for Hamilton to build light rail while maintaining 30-minute headways on regular transit routes serving LRT. Perhaps more importantly, early and significant investments in base transit levels are required." Any comment? I know you're a big promoter and advocate for public transit per se across the board. Possibly just maybe in this case, cart before the horse, or do you have a comment to that, please? Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Madam Chair. I would say, Councillor Jackson, that given where we're at with the climate crisis, I think it would be foolhardy to delay on the LRT. And I say that because, to me, there are benefits that fixed line brings. And that's the other piece of the equation here. What we need to be doing moving forward is facilitating the development of higher density communities. And I think we're already seeing some of that happen in our core. I think you've heard from developers who are out there doing some of that work, who, some of whom have said to you that they've made decisions based on that line coming. So that's an important piece of the puzzle that in turn is going to get us towards a community that provides more and more people an opportunity to live in the core and to be able to move around in ways that aren't going to require them to get into a car. So that I see the two pieces really working together. And maybe at that time when that first vision was developed, we weren't viewing the climate crisis in as urgent a manner as we are now. And I would say to you, if there's an opportunity for us to do something that's going to facilitate that intensification in the core, that's what's going to bring the riders to that line. And as well, I think if you look at the B-Line already, there are already a significant number of users who, and I speak as one of them, I'd be thrilled to see a system like that put in place that we can start to use as well. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. And lastly, even for those that are anti-LRT, they say at least at minimum it should go to Eastgate Square. Thoughts on that? Is the current plan flawed, or Madam Deputy Mayor?
Hey, if we can find the dollars for more LRT to happen, and full disclosure, I live within walking distance of the Eastgate Transit Hub. I think it would be fantastic, and I would point out to you that Riverdale, I believe, is the highest density neighborhood in our city, and there are a lot of transit users who live in that community. So to support them in their need for ease of mobility, that would make a lot of sense to me. But I would say at this point, anything we can do to get a line started, I think we need to go, and I would love to see this council continue to advocate for the funding we would need to extend out at some point in the near future to that Eastgate hub and beyond, and then further in a westerly direction into Dundas. Absolutely.
Thank you, Lynda. Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, Councillor Vanderbeek, can you take the chair? Thank you. Doctor, in your presentation, you didn't mention anything about electric vehicles or perhaps the rise in the number of electric vehicles that are being sold today and driven today. Is that having any sort of a significant impact yet on the environment?
I'm not seeing anything yet, and I would add, it's funny. I posted an article on our Facebook page for Environment Hamilton recently, and it was kind of a funny one, and it's an issue they're having at Tesla headquarters with too many cars and not enough parking spaces. So while I believe that those who can afford an electric vehicle, it's fantastic if they can make those transitions, I'd argue that there's still a challenge with that idea that we can all transition to electric-powered vehicles and not still have issues with congestion and use of, consumption of a whole lot of resources. We're sitting in a community where we make steel, and if anybody's looked at the pie chart, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions being released by our steel mills is incredibly huge. I mean, it dwarfs what our contributions are as a community. So I think they're positive, and I think for people who need a car, if you can afford it, that transition makes sense. But I'm not convinced moving into the future from a resource consumption point of view that that's going to solve our problems. I think as communities, we're just going to need to learn to support and celebrate public transit systems. And if anything, that'll mean paying more attention so that, and I would get back to that use of the term universal. We need these systems to be universally attractive so that everybody wants to use them and feels comfortable using them.
Thank you. Through the chair, I don't know if you would know my stand on the LRT, but I am also very interested in looking at electric buses. Mm-hmm. Have you had an opportunity to study electric buses in any cities and the impact that they may have versus traditional transit?
I think they're great from an air quality point of view, and I would hope that there's a commitment at this council to establish, great bus lines that feed into our LRT core line that are electric buses. I would certainly support that shift for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Those are my questions. And Councillor Vanderbeek, I'll take the chair back. Thank you. Seeing no other questions. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
The next